friend, Alex here from Audio Edges. I mix music full-time, and I make these videos because the majority of independent music released today does not sound professional and therefore won't gain traction, and I don't want that to happen to you. Today we are mixing another dry lead vocal to sound fully polished, expensive, and radio ready. This example is a slow pop track, kind of like a Weekend 50 Shades R&B, silky, smooth vocal style. We're going to process the vocal together, add some effects, and teach you how to think when you're doing this on your own. I highly encourage you to stay until the end because if you do, your vocal mixes will never sound the same as they did before. Thank you for your likes, comments, and for subscribing. I am so excited that you're here because we go deep in this channel weekly to get you real results. Before we dive in, I've compiled the juiciest list of some of my best mixing tips into a short, free guide. This thing is going crazy on TikTok and beyond, and I'm constantly hearing how mixers will print out this list and keep it next to them while they work, and they're getting some amazing results right away. Don't miss out on that because it's completely free. The link is in the description. I'm so excited to make some major breakthroughs for you in your vocal mixing. So without further ado, let's dive in. Okay, so we just hopped into the DAW and I'm going to show you guys what's going on here. I just have an instrumental track. I'm going to mute our vocal and just show you the vibe of the track. It sounds like this. Okay, and here is our vocal over top. This is just dry.
Whenever the mood strikes me right, whatever the rules are on my side, whatever the mood.
Okay, so you get the vibe. Basically what we want to do is get this vocal meshing with the instrumental we have and get a really nice polished sound on it. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my mixer page here. And here we have the lead vocal track here just after my instrumental bus. And I have this lead vocal track, which is a mono track going into a bus, which I have going to another mono track called lead vocal 2. And the reason for that is because Pro Tools will only allow me to have 10 plugins on one channel strip, and I want to carry over this track and add just a couple extra plugins just to control the last part of the vocal. So basically just think of this track and this lead vocal 2 as one continuous vocal chain here. And then here on the lead vocal 2, where we finish off our processing, then we're adding some sends here. I'll show you exactly what we're doing once we get there. But let's just start with the beginning of this vocal. I'm going to make sure I have it looped just from the beginning here. And let's solo it for now. We'll get it gelling with the instrumental in a moment, but let's solo it and take a look at this first Pro Q3 here. The very first thing we're doing to this is adding an EQ, and I'm just going to play it through bypassed for now.
Whenever the mood strikes me.
So my first impression of this is there's some low-end information that we can take out, and there's a little bit of a harsh frequency around here. So here's what this EQ sounds like, just doing a little bit of controlling of that.
Whenever the mood strikes me, whatever the rules are on my side.
So I'm just playing around, showing you guys which frequencies were bugging me. It's a little bit honky and boxy, so
whenever the mood strikes me right.
I'm literally just pulling out like a dB there, a little more than a dB, and I'm doing a high pass at 120, around 125 hertz roughly. And you typically with a male vocal, I will have a high pass around 85 hertz, and with a female vocal I'll push it up to 125. Those are the typical ranges that seem to work well for vocals. However, this is a higher male vocal singing kind of in a little bit of a higher range, and there's less low rumbliness that's of any importance in this vocal. So I'm going all the way up to 125. You'll see there's no information below that anyway, so I'm just cleaning out the lows so we can hit our compressors and hit the rest of our chain just with a more cleaned up sound.
Whenever the mood strikes me.
This is this frequency here that was a little bit annoying. So what I did is added a dynamic EQ and pulled it out just a little bit as well. Let's solo that and show you how we're going to clean that up.
Whenever the right, whatever the rules are on, whatever the mood is.
So do you hear how as soon as I turn that on, that cleans up the vocal a bit?
Whenever the mood is, strikes me right. Whatever the
It's very subtle, but that frequency, if I just take care of it now, get it out of the way, it's going to make everything a lot easier down the line. So I'm tucking that out of the way. And that's all I've done on this first Pro Q3. If you guys have seen any of my other videos, you know that I like to slowly shape the vocal and not do anything too aggressively within one plugin. Sometimes we'll get aggressive with plugins, but I'm just starting to shape it with little movements within each plugin. So first we got an EQ. I love to suppress resonances. So instead of going crazy with my Pro Q3, I'm using Soothe. This tool is just incredible. And in this case, we're using it to remove some of these frequencies down here. I used the de-honk preset just to get started, but then I dialed into this exact area, which was the problem in this vocal. I'm going to bypass it, show you guys what this is doing before and after.
Whenever the mood is, strikes me right. Whatever.
So here are the frequencies in particular we're targeting.
Whenever the mood is, strikes me right. Whatever the rules are on my side.
So as you guys can hear there, around the 400, 500 area, we have a little bit of like lower nasal tones, and it's a little bit it's muddying the waters a bit for this vocal to just pick a way to describe it. And just using the Soothe here, we're tucking it out of the way and it's just cleaning it up a lot. So without these two plugins, let's hear it.
Whenever the mood is, strikes me.
And let's just add these first two plugins on.
Whenever the mood is, strikes me right.
Already the vocal feels a lot more level, starting to already shape it into that pro sound. So next thing we're going to do is pull up this is the Puig Tech from Waves, and this is just an analog emulation EQ. And all I'm doing here is adding a high shelf boost. And what this is going to do is brighten up the vocal a little bit. So it'll depend. Sometimes I'll do the brightening a little earlier on the chain. Sometimes I'll do it towards the end of the chain. Sometimes I'll do a little bit earlier and a little bit later. And that's what I'm doing in this case. So I'm just starting to brighten up the vocal a little bit and get those highs coming out. Then we're going to hit the compressors in a moment. But first, I love to do a high shelf with an analog style EQ. I think you should definitely try that out if you can. It doesn't have to be this one. You could use the SSL EQ. Anything kind of analog to add a little high shelf on a vocal just puts this beautiful sparkle on it. So there's a little tip for you to try out. And all I'm doing is around 8K. Typically, I'll go around 10K in general, 10K and up for that high shelf on the vocal. This vocal needed, I dug a little back into the 8K territory because I found that sounded good for the high shelf boost. And here's all that sounds like when we add that in. I'll do without first.
Whenever the mood is, strikes me right.
And with.
Whenever the mood is, strikes me right.
Do you guys hear how it's just a little more airy? There's a little more breath on the top of it. So that's what we're doing here with about a little more than a 2 dB boost. It's a little bit aggressive, but not too much. And I also pulled out a tiny bit of 100, literally just attenuated like just a little bit. So don't worry about that too much, but I'm just tucking in the lows, brightening the highs, nothing too crazy, just a nice analog sound. Now, as you guys know, if you like to watch my videos, you know I'm a big fan of tucking the peaks in with just a little bit of compression first before hitting our main compressor. So I'm going to show you guys what that looks like. And I'm also going to go to a new line of this song just so we're getting some variety in the parts we're listening to. Let's open up this R compressor. All right, I'm gonna set this to factory default here so we can do this together. What I like to do when I tuck in the peaks of a vocal, it's just mainly tucking in those peaks so that they don't affect our main compressor as much. Our main compressor can do the work without being distracted by little transients in the vocal. We'll tuck those transients in first with this R comp, then we'll go into our next compressor. So here's how we do this. I find a ratio of 3 typically works well for grabbing these peaks out of the way, and a fast attack and release because we're really just doing a quick job getting in and out, tucking in those transients. So all we need to do now is dial in our threshold to where the peaks are just being compressed a bit. Let's take a listen.
Whatever the rules are on my side. Whatever the rules are.
So that's too much. I'm going to back off.
Whatever the rules are on my side. Whatever the rules are on my side.
So you can see how around a threshold around here, -3, is just tucking in the top of the vocal a little bit. I'm going to grab a longer sample chunk here for us. And that's all we're doing with that, a little bit of peak compression. Now we're going to dig in with this CLA 76. This is an 1176 analog compressor emulation. This thing is incredible. I'm going with the black version. There's a black and a blue. The blue can be a little more gritty, a little more aggressive. The black is really smooth and silky. And for this type of vocal where it's really soft and doesn't need too much aggression or heat, I really I think this black silky sound is best. Honestly, it's so subtle you probably can't even tell the difference. Maybe I can't even tell the difference a lot of the time, but I'm going with black right now. Okay, we got our analog button off because this can introduce noise that we don't want, so we're leaving that off. And I found a ratio of 4 worked really well for this vocal. Remember, the higher the ratio, the more we're compressing. But typically for vocals, 4 or 8 is totally fine. 4 sounded just fine for this. I like a medium attack and a fast release. That faster release on the 1176 compressor, this side is slow to the left, this side is fast to the right. That fast release there is what gives us that like kind of pumping pro pop vocal sound. And all I've done here is set this compressor the way I like and dialed in my input until it's doing some nice work on the vocals. Let's hear what it sounds like without.
Whatever the rules are on my side.
Did you guys hear as soon as I took that bypass out how we're getting that nice compressed pop sound? So that's what this is doing here.
Whatever the rules are on my side. Whatever the mood distracts me right.
All right, so that feels pretty good. Somewhere between -5 and -10 on this thing is a good place to aim if you're trying to dig into the vocal a little bit, get that pop sound. So this is kind of where I'm sitting here with this, and it's sounding really good. Let's grab the next piece of this chain, which is a Pro Q3. Whenever you add compression to a vocal, it's going to thicken it up a bit. It's going to thicken up that low end, and I like to control that right away after with another EQ. So this is just another Pro Q3. If you don't have FabFilter Pro Q3, don't freak out. Any EQ you can do, you can roll off the low end or make any of these movements. So you're good with whichever EQ you have. I like to use this one because it's really easy and makes it all so transparent. So all I'm doing here is controlling with a low shelf right here, a low shelf, some of this this low end that was introduced. Let's have a listen.
Whatever the rules are on my side. Whatever the mood distracts me right.
So do you hear when I bypass it, that low end is in there? It's not really a bad thing, and thick vocals are good, but just in this particular case where I want to have this vocal cutting above the instrumental, I found that this was the best move to do at this point.
Whatever the rules are on my side. Whatever the mood.
And you'll see here, I just did another low pass around here just to clean up some of the low end information that analog compression can introduce into a vocal. I'm doing a little bit of a high boost here.
Whatever the rules are on my side.
Now that I'm seeing this, it feels like it might be a little bit much, so I might back that off a little bit.
Whatever.
It's really easy to add like really pokey, piercing frequencies around 7K up to like 11K. So we have to be careful when we do these high boosts. But one thing that I found works really well is if you do those high shells and then control those piercing frequencies with a resonance suppressor like Soothe. I'm also getting a little bit of piercing noise kind of in these high mids here. So our next step of this chain is going to be Soothe. And basically what I've done is pulled up one of these Vocal D harsh presets, but I've targeted the areas. You always got to tailor it to target the areas that are a problem in the particular vocal, because each singer with their different mics are going to have different resonances with their voices and with the mic every single time. So I'm going to target those specifically with the Soothe, and these are the spots that I found.
Whatever the rules are on my side.
So I got a little bit of a whistling tone here around 1K.
Whatever the rules are on my side.
And you'll notice here I'm digging in a little bit harder with this. It is a little more aggressive, but I really got to make sure after brightening this vocal so much that it's not piercing like crazy. This is the spot that'll always get you on vocals. You got to remember between 3 and 4K is always really harsh. There's typically a piercing frequency there. And here is some of that stuff around 8K that we talked about that we're just tucking in. We're getting a little bit of S's in there, but it's more this cutting of that high shelf that we're controlling. We're going to add a de-esser in a moment. So this Soothe was in delta mode as I showed it to you, meaning we're listening to what we're taking out. So I'm going to flip it out of delta, make sure the vocal still sounds natural with this resonance suppression happening.
Whatever the rules are on my side, whatever the mood distracts me.
So you guys can hear how pro this vocal is sounding already compared to when it was dry. The last few steps of the way are just subtle things, really, except a little more aggressive multiband compression here. This, I find, can really help that pop vocal get that pumping feel. I grabbed the Pop Vocal Pro preset. This is the Wave C4, but I found that I needed to just tweak it a bit. So I'm letting those highs come out of the vocal here. I'm kind of compressing them and bringing them up a little more, even more high shelving. I know, he's crazy, right? It sounds great on these pop vocals. Okay, the low end, we're just tucking it out of the way again. And this isn't too crazy, but here's what it's doing.
Whatever the rules are on my side.
So now it's starting to sound a little more squished. It feels a little more saturated, but it's not actually saturating it really. That's kind of coming from the motion of this multiband compressor. And we got those highs sparkling up there, sounding really breathy, tucking the lows out of the way.
Whatever the rules are on my side.
Okay, so with it, this is going, once again, we're going for a pop vocal sound here. So this would probably be too much for just like, an acoustic singer-songwriter thing. We might not want to compress that much, but we're doing kind of pop vocal sound here. So this is totally cool. We're going to grab in one last instance of Soothe, okay? And I'm using the Vocal D Shadow preset, and I've tailored it to target these low frequencies here.
Whatever the rules are on my side, whatever the mood distracts me right.
Okay, so now we're getting that really crispy, compressed pop vocal sound that you hear all over the radio in modern pop songs. The only thing that's left is we have brightened it so much that now we have to deal with the sibilance that we've created. So that's where our de-esser is going to come in. We have a de-esser right here. Okay, and we're going to de-ess.
Whatever the
And before we do it, let me just tell you, I switched to the wide preset here because I find wide sounds a little more natural versus split mode that a lot of de-essers have. They'll have split and wide. Wide feels a little more natural for me, and I use this S chain here, the side chain, to find the frequency that I want to target. Around 5.5K was where the culprit was. So I listened like this. And tuck that out of the way, so the de-esser is working like this.
Whatever the rules are on my side.
Nice. Okay, nothing too crazy. We're just controlling those S's. Very last step of the way here, I'm introducing a little bit of just audio level destruction with Devil Lock. This is one of my secret sauce plugins here at the end of my vocal chain. and check out my mix here. It's 4%. This is just, I'm not going crazy with this. I am within the plugin, but the mix, I'm not going crazy. I'm just putting a little bit in there, and it's adding that last little bit of smooth saturation across the whole vocal, and I find this sounds really good. I'll show it to you guys a little more compressive, but you can copy my settings if you like. This is kind of an area that I think it sounds really good. Crush 6, Crunch 2, and let's have a listen here.
Whatever the rules are on my side.
That's obviously way too much, so I go with something like 4%.
Whatever the rules are on my side.
You can barely hear it, but it makes like the tiniest difference when you just add it in a little bit at the end. Okay, one more instance of a de-essing plugin. This one's called Sibilance, and this thing is great. I'm just using the Bright Pop preset and adjusted my threshold.
Whatever the rules.
You can hear it just grabs the consonants there.
Whatever the rules are on my side.
Okay, so that's the Sibilance plugin. And one last little bit of Pro Q3. I had a really I'm still getting harsh frequencies up here. I'm going to change to another phrase as well so we get some variety. I had a little bit of sibilance or piercingness up here around close to 10K. I'm just tucking that in a bit. This is just a disabled high shelf, so I'm going to get rid of that. And then I'm tucking in, I think, some nasal frequencies around 1.3.
Whatever the
that frequency was bugging me. Here's without.
Whatever the rules are on.
And that was with. So whenever I flip it out a bypass, that's when the effects turn on, of course. Here's that frequency. Kind of that telephone frequency. I'm just pulling that back just a little bit. Nothing crazy. That is our dry vocal train. The next part we're going to do here is add some effects. So we're keeping it simple on this one. And the first step of the way is width. Okay. So I created a send. I named it vocal width, and it's going right here to this track. On this track, I have micro shift. Okay. I have micro shift, and I just grabbed the lead vocal clarity preset, which is just adding a little bit of width with a wide focus in the lows. Okay. And I have that fully on wet because I'm going to blend it using this here. Okay. So like we said in all our other videos, you got to remember the trick with width is bring it in until you can just about hear it and then back it off a little more. Okay. So let's do that now.
Whatever the rules are on my side. Whatever the rules are on my side. Whatever the rules are on my side.
So right there, around there for me is perfect. I think that sounded great. Let's dive into vocal delay and reverb. Okay, so for this vocal delay, once again, I'm using a send from this lead vocal 2 track here. This is from after all of our plugins. I'm sending this delay, okay? And I just created a track called Vocal Delay, and on it, I have Echo Boy. Okay, this is on the vocal delay track, and I just went in and grabbed analog vocal slapper. And all I'm doing with this delay, I'm not creating like a delay throw in this case or anything too crazy. I'm just putting the voice into a room. It's almost like a little bit of wall reflection. And so this analog vocal slapper is a great preset to have for that. I've set it all the way to wet here because I'm going to blend it using the send, okay? Let's hear what it sounds like when I blend this in.
Whatever the
Okay. Probably I should unmute it, right? Okay, now let's have a listen.
Whatever the rules are on my side.
One thing I did do to this was I rolled in a bit of the lows off of it because without this low cut,
whatever the rules are,
the delay is a bit muddy and unclear. So I'm just cutting out the lows. We don't need them.
Whatever the rules are on my side. Whatever the rules.
And now I'm going to dial in the blend on the send and find just the right amount.
Whatever the rules are on my side.
So it's best if it's not super obvious. I'm going to actually pull in this feedback so there's less repeats.
Whatever the rules are on my side.
I think that's perfect right there. So that feels really good. Now we're going to make it nice and wet. Okay. So I've got 2 vocal reverbs. It's always good to do 2 reverbs, maybe one a bit shorter, one a bit longer, something like that. Here's the kind of the method I came up with for this vocal. I'm using this RC48 from Native Instruments Soft Tube, and I just went in and found the pop vocal preset. I love this preset because it has a very, very rich sound and it's very full sounding. So here's what it sounds like.
Whatever the rules are on.
Oh, hold on. I have to solo save it. Let's try again.
Whatever the rules are on my side.
Obviously, that's too much, but I really want you to hear what that sounds like because it's really rich, really full, fills out the vocal nicely. And it's not really a long reverb. It's kind of a short, medium reverb, which is a good place to just get it a little bit wet. Then we'll put it in a bigger room in a moment. But let's start by dialing this in. We don't need too much.
Whatever the rules are on my side. Whatever the rules are on my side.
Yeah, honestly, we don't need a lot. I think that sounded good. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to go back to the start of my vocal. Let's grab this vocal reverb 2, okay? This is the last part of polishing off our vocal. I have a plugin called Reverb as my vocal reverb 2 send, okay? And I've just grabbed a vocal verb preset. I think this is a preset from Michael Brower. Nothing too crazy going on here, guys. All you need to know about this reverb is that it's a hall reverb and that the pre-delay is very, very slow. It's not like super slow, but it's 71 milliseconds. So this is just making sure that the pre-delay is long enough that the vocal isn't washed out. Basically, the way pre-delay works is the shorter the time, the closer the reverb is to the vocal. So if you have a pre-delay of 0, the vocal is basically going to be sitting in the reverb. But if we back off that pre-delay, it sounds like the vocal is in front of the reverb and the reverb's behind it. That having the pre-delay a little bit longer allows us to have the vocal separate from it, which makes the vocal more clear in the mix, a little bit less muddy. And I find in this case, pre-delay around there, all these settings sounded great. So this is a hall reverb, around 3.25 seconds of decay. Here's what it sounds like.
Whenever the mood is.
Once again, I should unmute it, right? Okay, let's try again.
Whenever the mood strikes me right. Whatever the rules are on my side. Whatever the mood strikes me right.
Okay, so not too much, not too little. The instrumental of this song, the snare is pretty wet. Some of the elements have a bit of reverb, like the strings and stuff. So we want to make sure that the vocal sounds like it's in the same space as our instrumental. If the vocal wasn't wet enough, it wouldn't sound like it's in the same space as that snare and those strings. But if the vocal's too wet, then it sounds just like it's in a totally different environment. And it sounds like we mixed a vocal with a beat, which is kind of what we're doing, but you don't want it to sound like they're separate. You want to sound like it was meant to be together. So that's what we're doing here. We got to get our reverbs right. It is an art to figure out, but if you're here with me at the channel, stick with us, and in upcoming videos, we're gonna make sure that you really understand these concepts and know how to do it confidently every time. Okay, last part of this is I'm getting the vocal to gel a little bit with the instrumental by using a secret sidechaining trick that I'm going to show you. But before we do that, let's just have a listen to everything together. Here we go.
Whenever the mood strikes me right, whatever the rules are on my side, whatever the mood strikes me right, whatever the rules are on my side.
Okay, so I bypassed it. I bypassed what we did just to show you guys a little bit of before and after. Here's what we're doing. All of these vocal effects and our vocal track are sending to a vocal bus, meaning they're all summing together in one place. From that vocal bus, I just am sending another bus. I just grabbed an unused bus. In this case, it's bus 11, all right? And bus 11 here, I'm sending at unity gain, which means sending it at exactly 0. And I'm sending it to, well, it's a bus, and I'm collecting that bus here. And what is this? This is an instance of Soothe. I just grabbed the Take the Edge Off preset because I want to look more at the highs, and I particularly want to look more at the highs and high mids of the instrumental, because this is where the vocal and the instrumental can sometimes clash a little bit, especially with things like hats and transients in the instrumental. And basically what I can do with Soothe is I can sidechain our vocal production to the instrumental just to tuck the instrumental out of the way a little bit, only when the vocal is occurring. So what I've done is I've put this instance of Soothe at the end of the chain on the instrumental bus. It's just after a bus compressor, really. This is on the entire instrumental, and I've selected bus 11 from here, okay? Bus 11, and turned on the sidechain setting. So I've dialed in a few simple little settings here just to dig into this general area of the vocal, starting here around 500, going all the way up to the top for the most part. And I'm not digging into it too deep, just tucking some instrumental frequencies out of the way when the vocal occurs. Let's see what this is doing.
Whenever the mood distracts me right, whatever the rules are on my side, whatever the mood distracts me right, whatever the rules are on my side.
You really don't want to overdo this because you want this to sound super transparent. You don't want to hear the instrumental compressing or anything like that. So I find just tucking it out of the way, just about 1 dB in this case, maybe a little more, can really do a nice job and get the vocal working together with the instrumental. That's a really cool trick. I hope you like that one. Now, the last part here that I want to take care of is make sure our vocal is as clean as it possibly can be. And there are a couple things here that we can do. It sounds like there's a little bit of noise in between here, so I can edit this out. Let's have a listen.
Right, whatever.
Right? And there's a little bit of mouth noise, stuff like this. Not there. Right there. Do you hear that little mouth noise? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to render this with mouth declick, okay? And be careful when you do this. You don't want to dig too deep and take like important consonants out of the vocal. So you can use this output clicks only button. I know as a fact it's going to be good for this vocal, so I'm going to render this. And all that's going to do is clean up those mouth clicks.
Whatever the rules are on my side, whatever the mood distracts.
So the vocal's super clean now. I'm going to look in between here.
Mood distracts me right, whatever the rules are on my.
There's just I don't want to remove the breaths because it'll make it sound unnatural, but there's a little space. Anytime there's like just a tad bit of dead space in this vocal, we're getting a little bit of hiss and stuff from all the processing. It's not that the processing is bad. It's just that when you bring out those highs, when you're using analog EQs, and when you're compressing everything together, it's going to bring out that little bit of noise that was in the vocal recording. So we can clean that up by doing some editing in this style. Be careful, be selective, but it just makes those transitions not bring out noise in between vocal phrases, if that makes sense. Let's listen to what we just did.
Whatever the rules are on my side, whatever.
Okay, so nothing too crazy, just a little bit of extra editing care can go a long way, and I think that's all we needed to do here to take this vocal home. All right, friend, you made it to the end of the video. I hope you learned some really useful takeaways, and I hope we made some breakthroughs for you in your vocal mixing. I had a lot of fun with you working on this vocal, and don't forget to go download your free Ultimate Mixing Tips and Hacks guide. I know you're going to love it, and the link is in the description. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I really appreciate the likes and comments, and we will see you next time.